Hello everyone, it's Khalif PvP bringing you another Guild Wars 2 video. This time around I'm actually going to do something different. I'm actually going to talk about 3 things that I hate about World vs. World in the current iteration of Guild Wars. Before you go, I'm probably going to say, oh no, he's a hater, blah blah blah. Actually no, I love Guild Wars, but at the same time I want to address these issues rather than kind of sweep them under the rug. Sweeping under the rug is kind of fanboyism, and fanboyism really doesn't help the game out overall in its long lifespan. So I really want to address these issues and kind of get some input, kind of put it out there to let people discuss how these issues are either one prominent or either they're completely overblown. So hopefully you guys get an idea what the top 3 things that I hate about Guild Wars 2 World vs. World is. So the first thing that is wrong with World vs. World is loot drops. So when you go into a fight, you kill people, you get to get loot drops like this. These little bags, basically what happens is you have any sort of random loot in it. Sometimes it's armor, sometimes it's salvage armor, or sometimes it's materials, sometimes it's gold. But one of the things that is very useful in those bags are what's considered the tokens. Basically, the tokens are what you use for equipment. Let me see if I can show you a thing. These tokens, oh, these are the karma ones.
Thank you.
These tokens right here basically essentially translates to the PvP armor for World vs. World. So you use these tokens to buy these really awesome armor. Unfortunately, these bags just lie around all over the battlefield, and oftentimes what ends up happening is you're in a constant moving battle. You never really stay still in an open world confrontation, so you're moving, and oftentimes what will happen is you'll miss out on these bags. And that to me is the one of the first issues that's wrong with World vs. World. The solution, in my opinion, for this is to treat these tokens as almost like karma, and instead of having an actual tangible item that you place in your bag, it should be a currency that basically the same way that you get karma, you just get tokens. And again, this could be completely, again, it can maintain its randomness, but overall I think they definitely need to rework the token distribution, the method of token distribution for World vs. World. The next point that I don't like about World vs. World is, what is the big picture? Right now, the World vs. World scenario doesn't really have a big overall picture associated with World vs. World. For example, what is the big deal with winning and losing? Right? In other games, when you win a World vs. World scenario, you get to assault a keep, or you get to control some sort of node, or there exists a tangible benefit, tangible reward for maintaining World vs. World and winning World vs. World. In Guild Wars 2, this sort of reward really doesn't exist. If you win, if a server wins their World vs. World, they don't really gain anything other than just a +1 for their wins, right? There really isn't a big difference from winning and losing, other than, oh hey, we got our bonuses much faster. But those bonuses can really be achieved by anybody, you know, as long as you meet those point criterias. You'll get those bonuses such as magic find, endurance regeneration, HP regeneration, and whatnot. And there really isn't anything extra given to the winner. Like if my server wins, hoorah, it really doesn't matter because we really didn't get anything out of that win. And that's one of the reasons that I don't really have an issue with World vs. World. is that the winner doesn't get their reward. So one of the things that that I think would definitely solve that is giving the winning server some sort of reward, such as maybe sort of like how they do events right now, gold, silver, bronze, giving participants of World vs. World after they win, giving them sort of like a buff, or giving them those tokens that we talked about a little bit ago, giving everyone, the winner at least, giving them a set of tokens saying, oh, hey, your server won, here's your reward for winning. And right now that really doesn't exist, and because of that, World vs. World eventually is just going to be just a random clusterfuck of just, you know, pretty much a karma farm is what it currently is too. And I really think adding a tangible reward for winning is definitely going to kind of entice more people to win, because right now as it stands, you really there's no point to win. There's really no the bonuses that you get from quote unquote winning is really minute, that to your average your hardcore player, it really doesn't affect them that much. They're much rather just yak farm, what is considered following yaks around, than to actually do something that enables them to win, because right now winning is meaningless. So adding some sort of reward will definitely help out the end game of World vs. World. Adding, saying, hey, if you win, you get an extra bonus of medals. If you win, you get an extra bonus of karma. So doing something like that will definitely make that aspect a little bit better. So the last and final issue with World vs. World currently is off-peak players, as in non-primetime players. Currently, you got in any server pretty much, you have your primetime players and your non-primetime players. And usually in other MMOs where it's designated Eastern, Western, Central servers, you usually filter people in by the server location, right? So an Eastern server is more likely to have more primetime players. In Guild Wars 2, this isn't the case. There aren't any Eastern servers, there aren't any Western servers, it's just servers. Because of this, many servers get off primetime player bases that are primarily on it. For example, Oceanics communities will say, hey, everyone go to this server, this is going to be the unofficial Australian server, and everyone funnels into this server. And this right here is the final issue that I have with World vs. World, such that primetime players now, they have primetime battles, which is tooth and nail battles that occur because you got two primetime servers going at each other and they fight. So oftentimes the point distribution is kind of reflective of the primetime player base. What happens is one server will have a mediocre primetime server or primetime player base, and then a mediocre off primetime player base. And what happens is when both the other servers that they face don't really have primetime player base, it basically essentially is a free open house to the server without the primetime. And I'll actually illustrate it a little bit more in depth in a little bit, but let me point out this real world example. Before this match, like this morning, this afternoon, we got faced up with Isle of Janthier and Eridon Terrace and Crystal Desert. The reason that this matchup was made was because Isle of Janthier and Crystal Desert are both very strong servers. Before this point, we were pretty much undefeated. And same with Isle of Janthier, they were both really strong servers. Before this, our point distribution was reflective of that. It was basically the the real difference between Alleganthia, Crystal Desert, and Eridon Terrace was very minuscule. I think it was about few hundred points difference. And now the point distribution is this. If you can take a look and see Alleganthia, Crystal, this is a true point distribution right here, where this is very reflective of the true nature of War vs. World. Unfortunately, when all the primetime players for both servers logged off for the night because they have work, you can't really stay up. You either work, you got school, etc. When that happened, this is what the map looked like now. Basically, they have taken over pretty much every single aspect of this map. And this, I want to highlight, is this: taking over this fort that we're looking at, which is supposed to be a very strong keep. It is nearly impossible for us to do, because if you can see off in the distance, they got 3 trebuchets set up. If I actually go a little bit closer, you'll see they have a lot more other defensive turrets. They got catapults, trebuchets, they got arrow carts, you name it, they have it up there. And this is not rocket science. Fort that is defended is very hard to take over. This is, you only need few people to defend a fort to pretty much delay your attackers from taking over that fort. What happened for Eridon Terrace is when people logged out, their primetime players, these off primetime players came on, and to them this was a free cap. There was practically no defense, nothing going on. So for them, they were easily able to capture the whole entire map with minimum effort. Now, capturing and assaulting forts, it's a very dynamic thing. If you have a lot of opposition, it makes it a lot harder. So right now, with this amount of people, there's no way we can kill the people that are defending, as well as try to defend ourselves from these catapults that are firing down. And I know a lot of people, you're like, oh well, the balance will balance out. It's actually not the case. So let me illustrate why these off-peak players are actually never going to be balanced out. So let's assume we have 3 servers, A, B, and C, and each of them gets this amount of points per hour. A gets 100 points, B gets 80, and C gets 70. So, and let's also assume that this is actually inversely proportional to their off-peak players. So A has really crappy off-peak players, B has mediocre off-peak players, and C has really great amount of off-peak players. Now obviously this is a very blanket example, and this is not the case for all servers, but I think this point difference definitely highlights one of the facts that I'm mentioning, is that these off-peak players are given a little bit more of a freedom, a little bit more of an ease to capture forts. And again, this is very generalized example, but it will help you kind of understand what the whole big point is. So we put our time frame for 10 hours, and I'm going to break it down in 10 increments. The reason is, let's say 4 hours for our big example is the volatile time period, where you don't really know who gets what. So it's the forts are constantly changing, all the keeps are constantly changing, where there isn't no definite winner. So because of that, we'll break down the day for 10-hour periods. So after 10 hours, A gets 1,000 points, B gets 800 points, and C gets 700 points. Now, one thing I want to mention is that these points are hard earned, where because it's prime time, server A, B, and C are constantly fighting against each other to try and get these points. So if A has 10 forts, those 10 forts are won and held by tooth and nail pretty much, and they're constantly fighting, constantly under attack, and those 1,000 points are well-deserved 1,000 points, because they not only have to attack other forts and capture other forts, they also got to maintain a defense line for the forts that they currently have. So because of this, I consider this to be quote-unquote the true form of War vs. World. Now again, I know this is a big generalization and this is not always the case, but this example will definitely kind of highlight the output and the problems that War vs. World has. So what happens is after all the the peak players, the primetime players logs out, a lot of servers gets their off-peak players from South Asia and China and Australia, and these guys basically get a free romp of World vs. World because there are literally no defenders left. So not only do they have the fortifications that they have captured, now they can easily go out and capture other forts that are undefended. So in this example, we say that C doubles their point output. This is actually, in my opinion, being generous because from what I have seen, a lot of oceanic servers will pretty much get complete map dominance by the time the primetime players come back. But again, I'm being generous and I say they double their output. And one thing I want to mention is that the doubling of the output is pretty simple and pretty easy to do. They really didn't have that much of a fight, so it is definitely plausible for C to double their output. So after 10 hours, this is what we get. We get the initial points that we had plus the new points, and as you can see, C has now taken off with the points. And this is the problem that we have, is that after the primetime players come back, they usually come back to a map where one of the servers is dominating the whole entire map, and it was nothing like what they left off with, and this kind of discourages players from coming. And again, even if A was able to muster up enough force to get back the 100-point lead that they had, when they log off for the night, they know that this scenario will happen again. And that's very disheartening to kind of understand, like, oh, all the hard work that I do right now, it doesn't really matter because come nighttime, it's going to be all undone. And because of this, I've seen a lot of players just kind of just Doliac farm in World vs. World and kind of use World vs. World as a leveling experience rather than, in my opinion, what the true intent of World vs. World is to have, competition. So this, in my opinion, is one of the biggest issue that I have with World vs. World, is that there really is no sort of cap. And now, that is not to say that oceanic players and Asian players are second-class citizens and that they should be left out of World vs. World. No, that really isn't the issue. The issue is that they don't really have the same amount of difficulty taking forts as primetime players. Why is it that as a primetime player I have to fight tooth and nail to get 10,000 experience from taking a keep, whereas a oceanic player can do it significantly easier for that same amount of experience and points? And that this is, in my opinion, the biggest issue. The solution, in my opinion, to solve this is to have inversely difficult keeps depending on the opposition. So, for example, let's say A, B, and C. If C has 100 more people than A, it should be that much more difficult for them to take a keep than it is for A. So if in prime time it takes 10 players 1 hour to take a keep, in off-peak times it should take 10 players, somewhere around 5 hours to take that keep. Obviously, I'm overly exaggerating, but you get the point. And this way, even if you are an off-peak player, you still get a sense of difficulty, sense of kind of this. It levels out the playing field, because right now, a defended fort that you try to take on a prime time with arrow carts, trebuchets, and catapults is infinitely harder than taking a fort that's undefended. This is not rocket science. This is the truth. So because of that, I think having some sort of difficulty, like a dynamic difficulty, will definitely kind of even out these playing fields for servers, because it will offer servers with low population during prime time a little bit of a boost to defend their forts. And if off-peak players want to attack these forts, they will kind of have the same amount of difficulty of attacking forts as a primetime player. And that, I think, is probably the best solution for that issue. And that pretty much wraps up my 3 things that I hate about World vs. World. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if you guys like the video, subscribe, like it. Until then, have a wonderful Guild Wars 2